what do you take away as the purpose of this? Because she did say it's going to be about taking you sort of behind the curtain and showing you how to build a business.
It's got nothing to do with how to build a business, really. Like, there's a couple of small bits of advice. Like, Whitney Wolf says, don't sweat anything that you're not going to care about in 5 years' time. So fine, you know. But, so Meghan, it was true throughout Archetypes. Like, she doesn't want to pressure her guests at all, probably because many of them are her friends. She probably already knew exactly how Whitney Wolf Herd feels about the complete disintegration of her share price because she's Whitney Wolf Herd's friend. But we don't know, and she doesn't ask pressing follow-up questions because it's so softball. But if she wants people to be genuinely interested, this podcast could have been way better. Like, to whatever extent it did have some interest and some intrigue, it could have been way better if she'd gone more into like interrogating the subject. I mean, the episode was called The Evolution of the Entrepreneur. There's nothing in there about the evolution of the entrepreneur.
Well, I don't think she can press any of her guests, mainly because they're her friends, but also I just don't think there's much substance going on upstairs. I mean, seriously, I don't think...
But you can hire people for that, like hire a producer to tell
But then you have to
ask.
admit that there's nothing in your head. I mean, this is the... So Meghan and people like Whitney who kind of move in the same world, and you can see they're very similar. They have this very romanticized view of like what a business owner is and what a female business owner is, as if you get like extra brownie points. And yes, of course, I listened to the whole thing and I didn't learn a single business lesson, which I find quite frustrating. There are loads of business podcasts out there that don't teach anything about business or starting a business or anything. I mean, I kid you not, at some point during the podcast, they talked about bottling up your essence and selling it. And that is the stuff of
going to pop up on As Ever, the website.
I mean, it's just, it sounds like vagina candles all over again, a la Gwyneth Paltrow.
Vagina candles sold Goop. Like, vagina candles launched
I mean,
Goop.
it
wasn't a
brilliant.
mistake. It was marketing brilliance, but there's nothing anywhere near as like interesting or lively as vagina.
But that's because it was controversial. I don't think bottling essence, there's no controversy
around that. It didn't really smell it very much, thank God.
Yeah.
I thought it was just going to smell like off sardine. But I think ultimately, what Meghan is eventually going to have to realize is, yes, you tune into stuff because you want to learn about her, but there is not much to learn. She's very vacuous. She has a problem with word salad, I noticed. Maybe it's a California thing. But there's really not a lot of substance, to the extent that when she brings on someone who's actually done a lot with her own career and has had an interesting story to tell, she manages to make it as bland as humanly possible. And you really don't understand how. This is why I think actually stepping outside of the royal family was probably the best thing for her. Because when you are a member of the royal family and you're basically an ambassador for so many issues, you really have to get into the thick of it, and you really have to understand everything that you're doing. Princess Anne, for example, she's well known for being very well researched on all the sort of charities she's a patron of. She's very well versed in the issues that she is basically representing. Meghan doesn't have any of that. It's all just, bottling your essence and being happy and not stressing. And just, there's strength in being yourself. The magazines publish things about me, but there's strength in being yourself, as if you are not making money because the media are reporting on it.
An incredible impersonation, by the way. I was transported for a moment to Montecito.
Find your essence. And I was telling H.
This is the funny thing, is that if she actually leaned into the subject, then it would take all this pressure off her to be this incredibly captivating, interesting, exciting person, because we do care about business. And, she's leaned into this very niche, narrow element of it, which is being a female founder of a new company, which is quite a narrow definition. But actually, like, loads of people invest in the stock market. There's ways that you can expand that subject of business out and make it bigger. But this was one of the things that was so jaw-dropping to me about the Bumble share price issue, which is that Meghan is an investor. Like, people forget that, but Meghan has invested in various companies. So she's sitting there. She is the equivalent of the person who invested 75 grand in Bumble and lost all the money. Like, what does she think about a chief executive sitting there saying it doesn't matter that the share price crashed?
Well, she clearly has no understanding of business. Bear in mind, I hate to remind everyone, this is an actress. Like, she didn't train as a chemist or as a doctor or as an engineer. She is an actress. So I think it's fair enough to say, to not have high expectations of her intelligence. That being said, did you catch in the podcast when she said, "Oh, you're trying to start a business, but Archie's going to potty training"? And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean going to potty training? Are there like schools in Montecito where you send your children to be toilet trained?
Oh gosh, it took us a solid years for.
I caught that. I was very shocked by it because I'm like, surely not.
I guess she must mean maybe he's like crawling around.
That's interesting. Well, maybe we did get a little bit of a personal detail in there.
What they send their children to has mindfulness training. I mean, I kid you not, mindfulness training for a bunch of toddlers is hilarious to me. But that was one of the things they insisted upon.
So more broadly, so based on, I've taken on board your reviews. They do seem to be quite in line with the reviews I've seen elsewhere as well regarding the podcast. Off the back of archetypes, with the Spotify deal collapsing in quite a dramatic way a couple of years ago, do we think that Meghan is going to manage to push through with this podcast? Do you think that this will be her big podcast comeback, or do you think she's failed to land the plane?
I think this isn't going to be her big podcast comeback, but it could be a necessary step on the way for her to realise that she has to push herself harder and do more. I think there's a bit of complacency that's creeping into the Sussex camp, where they went in all guns blazing, largely pointed at the monarchy. They did the whole royal bombshells thing. Ultimately, it destroyed their reputation, so they had to stop. They then stopped and realised they had to do something that was more comfortable, and they wound up with something very vanilla. So they've done incredibly dramatic but toxic. Now they're doing boring but safe, and they need to find a way, but also a motivation to push themselves into more daring television or podcasts that isn't a fight with the monarchy. And they need something to drive them there. And so I think Meghan has to go through this phase of things that don't quite land in order to summon from within herself the motivation to leave the house and not just monetize her own life. Because I think that's basically what she's doing. She's trying to monetize her life. She's got a little home farm, which she's using to make crudité boards for the kids. And someone's turned around and said, oh, this is so wonderful. You make the best crudité boards. And she's like, I'm going to make it into a TV show. Yeah. It's like, you can't do that. Like, you know, your life, your millionaire lifestyle is not interesting enough to people who are struggling for you to just monetize your own life. You have to push it. You have to leave the house. You have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And what I actually think she should do is sit across the table from people who disagree with her, because no royal family member has ever done that. It's never happened. And if Harry and Meghan, I mean, you know, they will come up against, like, Harry will come up against his temper, because he's got a real temper, and he will get angry with people who, you know, if he sits across from Conservatives, from Republicans, he will have to manage his temper. And Meghan will have to really get to know a subject very well, and she'll have to force herself to get to know the subject inside out in order to do it. But they have to stop just having love-ins with their friends. Like, it's so boring, and they can do better. Like, Meghan honestly can do better, and she just needs to aim higher. But in order to aim higher, she needs the motivation. She needs to feel the hunger, and there's just no hunger with them.
And I think she needs to be comfortable with controversy. I think she's so scared of saying the wrong thing, which is interesting, because she's become such a subject of controversy. I mean, the term Megxit is because of her. I will say, though, there was a piece by Trevor Phillips in the Times where he said, you know, Meghan and Harry leaving the royal family was a huge missed opportunity, because, you know, she could have been the face of a campaign to address the issue of skin bleaching and colorism in parts of South Asia and mainly sub-Saharan Africa, where women are using these toxic chemicals, often cancer-causing chemicals, to try and lighten their skin. And this whole idea of, you know, wanting to be lighter and beauty standards and all of that. These are things that she didn't really need to do much, just being the face of it and highlighting those issues, which I know would have been very significant for me, especially growing up where I did. But she's not, I don't know if she's not cerebral enough to take these on, or daring enough. I mean, these are things that people would really appreciate, because she is a celebrity. She's always going to have media outlets following her wherever she goes, but she can do something with that other than vacuous, empty, boring things like selling jam or having interviews with basically her friends that don't really add any value to anyone's lives. And I think that's something that they should really be comfortable with pushing.